Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. So yesterday I got to go do a little bit of scuba diving at Apo Island here in the Philippines. And although I did get a lot of underwater footage, some of which I'll be showing you on this video today, I want to talk more about its history. The story I heard yesterday about a highly successful conservation that could be the template for the rest of the country and maybe the rest of the world. So, let's get into it.
Critter Hunter.
Apo is a tiny island of about 12 square hectares, located about 30 kilometers south of Negros Oriental. There's a population of around 1,000, most of which include the park rangers and the staff of 2 small resorts. The few locals that live on the island make a living off tours, souvenir selling, and tourism-based jobs, and fishing. But all this sounds like every other small island around the Philippines. So what makes Apo Island so unique? Let's get into that. In 1979, as an experiment due to drastic declines in fish populations around the island, Silliman University's Dr. Angel Alcala brought a proposal to the local communities and the governance of Apo that was unheard of at the time. The goal was to regulate destructive fishing, increase fish abundances and biodiversity, and still maintain or even increase local incomes. That sounds like a great goal, but of course it's not easy to convince old school fishermen of the change. Dr. Alcala needed to do some convincing. It took 3 long years of talks, but eventually in 1982, Alcala and the Silliman Marine Laboratory, along with the Apo Island mayor and local fishermen, came together and selected an area along 450 meters of shoreline and extending 500 meters from shore as the sanctuary site. So because huge areas were now illegal to fish, a new economy needed to be developed to take the place of the lost incomes and food. Tourism was the answer in Alcala's plans. Philippines was quickly becoming a hot spot for scuba divers and snorkelers and beach lovers, and there was no reason that Apo Island couldn't attract their fair share. The only catch was that those same areas that were off limits to fishing would also be off limits to divers and dive boats, or any other anchoring of any kind. The long-term strategy was simple. Certain sections would be off limits to everyone, while others weren't. Then after a year or more, they would alternate, giving each section time to grow new habitats, all the way from tiny corals to huge schools of fish. Corals would get relief from dynamite fishing, cyanide fishing, destructive anchors, and everything else, including divers accidentally kicking and breaking corals. The results speak for themselves. The hard and soft corals, undisturbed, grew free and wide, which attracted countless reef fish that used them as nurseries. The reef fish numbers grew huge, which then attracted the bigger fish. The whole ecosystem continued to expand. It was a huge success. Another big factor to the success was that only locals of the island are allowed to fish there now. No big Chinese vessels with long lines, and no more fleets from Negros or Mindanao. The fish would only support local economies and families. In other words, no overfishing. When it was time to alternate the off-limit areas, the destructive fishing practices like dynamite were still illegal, and it was still regulated. On top of that, each year there were fewer and fewer fishermen as they found better incomes in the tourism industry. Permanent anchor points and buoys were also set up in designated dive sites so that no dive boat would drop an anchor on a giant table coral again. On top of that, the number of daily boats was and is regulated so that there is never more than a reef can handle. So what has been the outcome of Dr. Angel Akala's big experiment? In short, the results are far-reaching and incredible. The incredible part is obvious when you get to visit Apo Island like I did, and either snorkel or dive above fields and fields of hard and soft coral in every color imaginable. It's now considered by many, including myself, as one of the top 100 dive locations in the world, just from its sheer numbers of abundant species found on each site. The Shed Aquarium in Chicago even modeled their new exhibit from one of the dive sites around Apo. It's that spectacular. But if you don't want to take my word for it, here are some numbers. Just around this tiny island, there have been, so far, more than 650 species of fish and over 400 species of corals documented here. That's huge. To get a little perspective on that number, in all of Florida, with its 1,350 miles of coastline, there's only around 900 known species of fish. Compare that to Apo Island's 5 hectares of land. So that is why it's such a spectacular result. But why did I say it was widespread? To answer that, we have to go back in time. After seeing Apo Island, Philippines' first marine reserve, the Philippines government has set up hundreds of other reserves in many other islands and locations, which will assuredly ensure the future for fish populations. On top of that, they also passed a law that allows local governments to completely regulate all water activities for up to 15 kilometers of their own shoreline, which should mean more regulation. So although the system isn't perfect, and at first not everybody was happy, in these days it seems like everybody's happy, even the fishermen. The fish stocks in the regulated out-of-bounds areas grew so large that they overflow into the fishing areas. And then eventually the fishing areas alternate, and it keeps the fishermen happy for a lifetime. Overall, the fishermen all agree that there's more fish available now than there was before the regulation. And for the most part, everyone's happy. So is this little known island a prime example of what a marine conservation project should look like? I think so. If what I found yesterday and filmed was any example, it just has to be. So there you have it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And it'll help me out a lot if you share it. As you can see, Apo Island is a really special place. I'm really lucky to be able to dive it, especially now during lockdown and quarantine and everything. So make sure to subscribe, because in my next video, I'm going to show you my actual dive. All my footage, all the critters that I found yesterday, everything else behind the scenes of filming underwater at Apo Island. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.